Relax, it's charity, Mom smirked, tapping my card against the counter like a toy. You weren't using that money anyway. Be a good daughter for once. The word good scratched the inside of my ribs. The kettle hissed. Somewhere in the house, Dad hummed like nothing had happened. My throat tasted like metal. The balance I'd built one tiny deposit at a time, double shifts, leftover tips, 100 small sacrifices, was suddenly a hollow bowl. $4,700 wasn't just numbers. It was my rent buffer, the dentist I kept postponing, the shoes I hadn't replaced even though the sole was lifting like a loose scab. The app screen glowed empty, smooth as a lie. Hi everyone, my name is Marlo Pierce. I'm 28. If you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Dad had said it soft, almost bored. I just used your ATM card to pay a bill. Then turn of the wrist, a shrug, the kind of shrug that makes you feel crazy for caring. When I said, that's my rent, he smiled at Mom like we were a skit. I'm the punchline, she's the applause sign. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I set the kettle down and stared at the hairline crack in my favorite porcelain bowl. The one I'd glued last winter, the seam so thin you'd miss it unless you traced it with your thumb. Under the kitchen light, the crack looked like a silver river, a quiet map leading somewhere colder. On the table, receipts curled like pale fish. The card notification feed was a parade of approved, 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 the timestamps marching through the night. Liquor store. A transfer labeled, donation, family fund. My hoodie cuff was still damp from dishwater, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner. I wiped a thumbprint off my phone screen and watched my breathing settle into neat, quiet boxes. I'll put it back, Dad said, reaching past me for the sugar. You always make a fuss, Marlo. Fuss. Like Kara's noise. The quiet thing I did wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve keys or doors or any big goodbye. It was a form, a thread, a simple lever I could pull without raising my voice. I read every word twice. I attached what needed attaching. I followed instructions most people skip because they think someone else will save them. Outside, the porch light flickered. Once, then again, like a signal no one else noticed. I set a time on my phone with my thumb, the tiny vibration confirming what I'd already decided. The house clock ticked in the hallway, steady as a metronome. Mom laughed from the living room at some sitcom with canned claps, and Dad's hum blended with it, a soft, careless buzz. 7:59 a.m. The crack in the bowl caught the light and turned to a thin blade of silver. 8 a.m. was almost here. When Dad's scream tore through the morning, it wasn't just sound, it was a rupture. The kind that makes birds pause mid-flight and neighbors freeze mid-sip on their tea. I stood at the kitchen doorway, coffee cup trembling, pretending to scroll my phone. He stumbled into the living room, half-dressed, his face white with disbelief. Who did this? He gasped, eyes wide, sweat already collecting at his temples. Mom followed, her robe trailing like arrogance. What now, Sam? Did the Wi-Fi bill finally autopay? She teased until she saw his phone. The air changed. He turned the screen toward her, voice breaking. Our accounts. Every one of them, gone. The savings, the joint, everything. She blinked, confused. What do you mean gone? I mean transferred, he hissed, to her. His finger pointed straight at me. For a moment, the house was silent except for the ticking wall clock, the same one Mom always bragged about buying with cash. I didn't move. I didn't need to. He shoved the phone closer, the Gmail notification glowing between his shaking fingers. The automatic alert read. Your linked accounts have been moved to an external safe hold per legal authorization. Signed Marlo Pierce. He looked at me like I'd become a ghost wearing my own skin. Explain this. I set the cup down gently. Remember when you used my ATM card, for a bill? You accidentally authorized account access on my name when you switched the app. I just used what you signed. Mom's voice dropped low, sharp. You can't do that. Actually, I interrupted. You both did. I just pressed confirm. Outside, a car horn honked. Inside, silence clung like humidity. Dad's lips trembled. You stole from your own parents. I met his eyes, steady. No. I reclaimed what you labeled charity. The porcelain bowl from last night still sat on the counter, crack glinting silver. The same crack that had lived there long before the money ever disappeared. Mom whispered, Marlo, what did you do? I smiled faintly. The quiet thing. And right then the front doorbell rang. The doorbell echoed like a warning shot through our small suburban hallway. Dad flinched, his phone still clenched in his hand like a detonator. Mom's robe brushed the floor as she hissed, "Don't you dare open that door, Marlo." But I already was. Outside stood a man in a slate gray suit, clipboard in hand, expression polite but distant. The kind of calm that only comes with authority. His badge reflected morning light. "Mr. and Mrs. Pierce?" he asked. "I'm here on behalf of Allied Trust Bank's Compliance Division." Dad's breath hitched. "Compliance? What compliance?" The man nodded toward the open door. "We received notification of unauthorized usage of a customer's personal debit and identity information. Ms. Marlo Pierce has formally requested verification of ownership and reversal under the state's Family Financial Misconduct Act." The words landed like bricks. Mom's lips parted but no sound came. I stood beside the doorway, hands still, voice calm. "They used my personal account for private spending without consent. I followed protocol." Dad's face turned a deep, blotchy red. "You reported your own parents?" The man cleared his throat. "Sir, this isn't a criminal report. It's an internal audit and freeze request. Until verified, all joint funds are under hold. Any further transactions will require dual authorization." Translation: everything they thought was theirs, locked. Mom gripped the back of a chair for balance. "Marlo, you can't do this to us. We're family." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who had once ironed my uniforms before every shift, who later told me, "You should be grateful we let you stay rent-free." My heart didn't harden. Just quieted. "Family," I said softly. "You both made that word expensive." The officer glanced at me, nodding respectfully before leaving them a folder. "Please respond within 7 days," he said, then turned and left. The silence that followed felt like years pressing down on the room. Dad muttered, "You'll regret this, Marlo." I picked up my coffee cup, now cold, and whispered, "I already did. For years." Behind me, the front door clicked shut, sealing in every echo of disbelief. And in that sealed silence, I realized something terrifying and freeing. They'd finally have to face a world where I no longer funded their comfort. That night, the house felt heavier than usual, like the walls had swallowed all the shouting that never came. No dinner, no conversation, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Dad pacing. I sat on the edge of my bed, laptop open, rereading the confirmation email from the bank's compliance department. "Your request for investigation and safehold has been approved. Funds will remain frozen pending verification." That word, frozen, felt poetic. For once, it wasn't me who was stuck. Outside, streetlights flickered against the curtains, painting faint amber lines across the floor. I thought of all the small humiliations that had led here, the way Dad used to say, "You're lucky we even let you keep that job," or how Mom would call my independence a phase. They treated my money like community property, my time like service hours. Now the roles had shifted. Quietly, wiggly, irreversibly. A knock came at my door. "Marlo," Dad said, his voice cracked. "We need to talk." I opened the door halfway. He stood there, shirt untucked, hair wild. A man who had lost more than just balance sheets. "You made your point," he said. "But this is too far. You've embarrassed us. People are talking." "About what?" I asked. "That your daughter learned to read terms and conditions?" His jaw tightened. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said softly. "I just stopped letting you treat me like a wallet with legs." He rubbed his temples. "I raised you, Marlo. You owe us respect." I looked him dead in the eye. "Respect isn't a subscription you can auto-renew with my bank card." His silence said everything. From the hallway, Mom's voice floated, cold and sharp. "Let her go. She'll crawl back when she realizes she's nothing without us." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. But at least I'll be nothing on my own terms." He turned away, shoulders slumped, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father not as power, but as fear. Fear of losing control. The porch light flickered again, that same quiet signal. This time I didn't ignore it. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains like an intruder afraid to enter. I hadn't slept. Every hour I heard the muted buzz of Dad's phone. Calls from the bank, texts from friends, all unanswered. Downstairs, the house smelled of burnt toast and quiet defeat. When I stepped into the kitchen, Mom sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, her face set in a mask of control. "You've really done it this time," she said without looking up. Your father's credit card was declined at the gas station. People saw. I poured coffee, the sound louder than her voice. Maybe now he'll know how it feels when someone uses what isn't theirs. Her eyes shot up, sharp as glass. You humiliated him. You could have just asked for your money back. I let out a small laugh. Asked? Like the dozen times I did before you called me selfish? She looked away, jaw tight. You've always been dramatic. Dramatic. That word again. I took a slow sip and let the bitterness settle. You know, Mom, I think you mistake boundaries for drama. Dad entered, eyes sunken, voice brittle. We talked to the bank. They said the audit might take weeks. You froze everything, our bills, our mortgage, everything. I met his gaze, steady. Then you'll understand why I worked 3 jobs just to keep mine afloat. He rubbed his face with both hands. You're destroying this family. I looked around the kitchen. The expensive coffee machine I'd paid for, the chandelier from my bonus check, the bowl with the silver crack catching sunlight. No, Dad. I'm just removing my name from the list of donors. They didn't reply. They just sat there, trapped in the silence of their own entitlement. As I walked toward the door, I whispered to myself, some debts are paid in quiet revolutions. Outside, the air smelled different, clean, sharp, free. And somewhere behind me, I heard Mom finally whisper, almost trembling, what did we do to her? I didn't turn around. Days passed in a blur of phone calls and whispered arguments that seeped through the walls like fog. I kept to my room, answering only when necessary. Each evening, I'd hear the same cycle downstairs, Dad's raised voice, Mom's defensive hiss, then the sound of something breaking, usually small like a cup. The house was shrinking under the weight of its own denial. On the 5th day, a letter slid under my door. It wasn't handwritten. Typed. Formal. We would like to resolve this matter privately. Please contact us before Friday. Love, Mom and Dad. Love typed. Like a signature on a complaint. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside my laptop. The email notifications from the compliance department had stopped. The case was in final review. The truth was already printed somewhere, sealed in a file that didn't need my voice anymore. That evening I went for a walk. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and earth, and for the first time in years I felt light. Not happy, just lighter. Passing the old bakery, I remembered when Dad had refused to let me buy a small cake for my own birthday. We don't waste money on meaningless things, he'd said. That memory used to sting. Now it just felt small. When I returned home, the living room lights were dim. Mom sat on the couch, eyes swollen. You win, she said quietly. The audit came through. They confirmed the misuse. Dad didn't look at me. He just muttered, we didn't mean harm. Maybe not, I said, voice steady. But you meant control. Mom's tears streaked down her cheeks. What do we do now? I glanced at the clock, 8 p.m. The same hour 7 days ago that I'd filed the report. You learn, I said softly. For once, you learn what it feels like to lose something you took for granted. She looked up, trembling. And you, Marlo? What will you do? I hesitated, fingers brushing the crack in the old porcelain bowl on the mantel. I'll start over, I whispered. This time with my own hands. That night I packed in silence. Not in anger, in rhythm. Every fold of clothing felt like punctuation on a sentence I'd been trying to end for years. The suitcase wasn't heavy, it was the air that was. Downstairs, the television played too loud, like they thought noise could drown consequence. When I reached the bottom step, Dad was waiting by the door, arms crossed, expression tired rather than furious. You're really leaving? Yes. He nodded slowly, staring at the floor. After everything we did for you. I cut him off, calm. You mean after everything I paid for? The phone bills, the car repairs, the vacations labeled family time, that came from my debit card. He swallowed hard. You make it sound like we're villains. Then maybe stop acting like victims. Mom appeared behind him, her eyes hollow. Where will you go? You have no one. I zipped the suitcase, the sound slicing the silence clean in half. I have me. That's a start. She flinched. We didn't mean for it to go this far. I know, I said gently. But meaning well isn't the same as doing right. Outside, dawn was cracking open, pink lights spilling across the quiet street. The same neighbors who'd once envied our perfect family, now pretended not to look when they saw me loading the trunk. Before I shut the car door, Dad whispered, You'll regret this, Marlo. The world isn't kind to women who burn bridges. I leaned out the window, meeting his gaze one last time. Maybe not. But it's worse to live under a roof built on lies. The engine turned, a soft purr beneath the morning chill. As I pulled away, I caught sight of Mom standing at the window, hand pressed to the glass like she could hold me there by guilt alone. She couldn't. The porcelain bowl, I'd left it on the table. Cracked, yes, but still whole. Maybe it was my parting message. Some things don't have to break completely to never be the same again. I didn't look back. The quiet was mine now. I moved into a small studio apartment downtown. One window, one creaky chair, one piece I didn't have to earn. The silence felt different here. It wasn't punishment anymore. It was possibility. The first night I made ramen in a chipped bowl from a thrift shop. Cheap, imperfect, but mine. By the third week I'd adjusted to the rhythm of my own life. Mornings with black coffee, afternoons freelancing from my laptop, evenings watching city lights blur into gold. I blocked Mom and Dad's numbers after the fourth voicemail, their tones swinging from apology to accusation like a metronome of guilt. I didn't need to hear it anymore. One morning an email popped up. The subject line read, "Account closure confirmation. Allied Trust Bank." The message was short, impersonal. "All investigations have concluded. Funds have been restored to the rightful owner. Case closed." Rightful owner. The phrase lingered longer than it should have. It wasn't about the $4,700 anymore. It was about every piece of myself I'd quietly handed over for approval. I'd taken it all back. That evening I visited the local park. The one I used to pass as a kid but was never allowed to stop at. I sat on a bench watching children run under autumn leaves, their laughter cutting through the fading light. For the first time in years my chest didn't feel like a locked drawer. I opened my phone and stared at a photo from months ago. Me, Mom, and Dad at the dinner table, all forced smiles and hollow warmth. I deleted it. In its place I took a new one. My hand holding that same cracked porcelain bowl. I'd gone back for it the day I left. Cleaned it, sealed the seam with gold epoxy. The crack gleamed now, no longer a flaw but a reminder. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's paperwork. Silence. Boundaries. And somewhere in the quiet between heartbeats, I finally forgave myself for staying as long as I did.